Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome you to what is going to be the most exciting of the 9-week modules. Thanks for being here. I have to say that we are going to be talking about selling, so it's better than calling it a celebration of spreadsheets or something like that. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you have businesses already? Cool. How many of you are thinking of starting a business in the next year? Cool. How many of you are interested in starting a business that sells to consumers? Okay, cool. A lot, I will tell you, first of all, what the plan is for this presentation, and there's a lot of content to get through. Just before we kick off, though, I'd like to introduce you to a colleague of mine, Sophie Vanner. And Sophie is going to be coming up and basically anchoring the presentation to talk about social media and how you use it. She is 20 years my junior, and that's why I have her here. I don't really have much of a Facebook page, so I'm probably the wrong guy to talk about it. So first of all, I'll talk to you a little bit about my own background and my own philosophy around business in general. And then I'm going to talk to you about what I call the benefit of being a pirate, which is essentially a series of stories that are mainly coming from larger companies. And these stories are a watch out for what you need to avoid as an entrepreneur, as a smaller business. Then we're going to talk about the evolution of channels, which is really mainly about communication channels. And then we'll talk a little bit about what I call the disillusioned consumer. Right off the top, though, and then finally, sorry, most important bit, there's 3 key tools that I think are really important to you guys. Every day I speak to much larger companies. I've worked with many startups, however, and so I'll get into the philosophy bit in a second, but the 3 tools that we're going to talk about today are the ones that I think are really essential for you guys. Obviously, sales and marketing is a massive subject. We could talk pricing strategy, we could just talk about a subset of advertising. I'm going to talk to you mainly about the importance of purpose and the way that you magnify that message. So the 3 tools that we're looking at are, 1, a brief discussion around brand essence, the second is the path to purchase, and finally, social media, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm going to be sticking around afterwards, so if you guys want to ask me questions at the end, please feel free. If you want to ask me questions over drinks, I'll probably be more colorful in my responses, so I encourage you to approach me. So first of all, Robert Hocking, who, what, why? I'm a Canadian, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a brand strategist. So I have, in the course of my career, which is more than 25 years, I've basically gone on and off of being an entrepreneur. So I started my first business when I was 21 years old, and in 2 years it was taken over by a firm out of the United States. Sounds all great. I didn't make a penny, but I learned a lot. I started in advertising and focused on strategy, and my job as a strategic planner is basically to find the truth of a brand, and that involves looking at research, looking at market, looking at competitive sets, and then figuring out how to position a client's brand in the midst of that. When I was 27, I launched an agency of my own and turned into a group of 4 agencies, 3 that we started and 1 that we acquired. And after running that business for 8 years quite successfully, we got slammed and I laid 55 people off overnight, sold my shares in the business, left, and had a complete, kind of coming to Jesus moment for myself, whether I even wanted to stay in business anymore. And I took my experience, got into larger agencies, and I've had the chance to work as a vice president of strategy for Ogilvy & Mather. I've worked in New York and Chicago. I've worked with major brands, as Claire talked about, all over the world. And I eventually progressed through this agency. I left again and started a consultancy. And as Claire said, I own a food brand as well as running a ventures group, which essentially involves looking at interesting new ideas and figuring out how to get them to market on behalf of a much larger company. So that's where I come from. Now, when I was first approached with the idea of talking about entrepreneurship, I was really keen about it. And the simple fact is because, as I said, I think that a lot of the clients that I've traditionally worked with can be taken. The reality is, any disruption that's going to happen in the markets that my clients are in, I do not believe they're going to come from my clients. I think they're going to come from people like you. And I'm going to talk a bit about that. And so the thing that I find so exciting about entrepreneurship is it's the ultimate meritocracy. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your accent is. It doesn't matter what your education is. Steve Jobs didn't have a degree. Bill Gates didn't have a degree. Michael Dell doesn't have a degree. It basically centers on having an idea and passion. And I'm not saying, I'm probably the wrong environment to bring this up, but the idea is that great ideas can come from anywhere. And you are at such a critical moment now when you see the world as a challenge. And the larger the company is, the more they see the world in a defensive posture. And they try and protect what they've got. So if you ask me what has fundamentally changed in 25 years of listening to a lot of consumers in a lot of categories, you know, my career I've done a lot of technology work. When I had my group of agencies, about 50% of our revenue came out of Silicon Valley. So I've seen both sides of B2B as well as B2C, so you can ask me questions in those areas. But I think the big things that have changed are attention. I think it's really, really, really hard to get people's attention today. You know, I've seen a variety of stats, but the one that's most consistently bandied about is the typical person is exposed to about 5,000 messages a day. You know, I remember when in the roles that I played in my business, speaking to clients of, you know, we're a professional services firm, international, talk to clients, they said they got anywhere from 5 to 50 calls a week from companies like mine. You know, so the demand for attention is vast, and people's ability to give that attention is very, very low. The other thing is choice. Choice is incredible. If you've ever approached a toothpaste aisle, you know what I'm talking about. There's more choice today than people can possibly buy. And I'm going to quote a stat to you later just to show you how tough it is to actually get on people's radar. And of course, there's cynicism. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. So basically, you've got too much information going at consumers. They've got too much choice already, and most of what they hear, they don't believe. But that's the beauty of social media, because social media is the ultimate, it's the ultimate, the best and the worst thing for any company today, because you can be found out both positively and negatively. So there's positive and negative in all the things I've just said. So very quickly, my simple definition for you guys around marketing is this: why you are, what you are, and how you're promoted. Why you are, this is a big thing. If you've never seen this guy speak, he's on TED Talk, Simon Sinek. Couldn't say it better myself. And what he said is, I talk to a lot of companies, they can tell you what they do, they can tell you how they do it, they can't tell you why they do it. And that's really fundamental, especially with a small business today. What you are is essentially how you manifest that, and then how you're promoted is, of course, you know, how you reach the world and convince them that you're the one. But the thing I'd really, really emphasize here is that brand trumps marketing. So brand, I'm going to talk a bit about more of this later. Brand is not a logo. If you're Volkswagen right now, you can't redesign the Volkswagen logo and save yourself, okay? Brand is what they are. It's a behavioral thing. So brand trumps marketing, and purpose trumps brand. I have worked with tons of companies that are, and I'll reference some of them later, but lots of companies that have got great marketing strategies, big budgets, terrible products, and they fall on their face. I've worked with many companies that have very bad strategies but great products, and they succeed. And I think a lot of what makes the difference is a strong sense of purpose. But let's be clear, and this is so important, it is so easy, you know, especially when you look at marketing. I mean, and a lot of the companies I work with, guys like Sony and American Express, and I'll say basically Chatham House rules on this stuff, okay? So these are guys who view the world through a spreadsheet. And that is something that you cannot get involved in. It's very easy to get caught up in the machination of business and to lose sight that it is supposed to be at this stage fundamentally simple. And if it's complicated, then you've got to go back and do it again. Because here it is, if no one cares, everything else you learn is going to be academic. It's a fact. So I'll talk to you about the benefit of being a pirate quickly. So there's a series of stories here, and what I'm telling you here is really meant to illustrate the challenges that we face today. Or that you guys, these are the guys that you're going to be competing against, hopefully. These are the guys that I hope you take down as your business succeeds. The first one talks about what women really want. And I start with that one because I'm always fascinated. Women drive the majority of purchase decisions in most categories. And so and most categories, most purchase decisions are emotionally led. So when you sit down and you just talk to people about what's important to them, you really get a sense of obviously their values, what they prioritize, etc. What's remarkable though is when you work with large companies, it's an incredibly rare thing when you come across somebody that actually understands what these people are talking about. So when you talk to a consumer and talk about values, you go into a large company who wakes up every day and their motivation is profit. You really see that the two, it's amazing that these guys sell anything. So when, in this case, I'll use the example of food. When you talk about food, typical woman that is, say, my age, slightly younger, knows on average about 4 recipes. So she's got 21 meals a week to put on the table. She goes into a grocery store. She faces ingredients that she doesn't know how to use.